Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taylor Baca's Greenhouse Podcast. Today we will be talking about lights in the greenhouse. Now we're going to look at our status quo here and see that we chose sunlit as our status quo. So we're going to have three different options for everyone listening about what type of light in the greenhouse would be most effective. Now before we get into that, I have to address to some of our listeners that yes, sunlit greenhouses do tend to flourish better. The artificial light sometimes can't keep up with the sunlight depending on where you're at. But for other plants, like say peace lily, which actually can grow quite nicely in artificial light. Now if we take a look at our decision matrix, we're going to see we're going to have four separate decision factors. And these are going to be price, light output, space and size, and lastly, life expectancy. Now let's talk about our three other choices instead of using just sunlit. Now we have LED, we have T12 fluorescent, and we have metal halide. Now let's talk about our decision factor number one, which is price. Now let's take a look at sunlit. Obviously, you're not going to have to pay for the sun. That would make no sense. But as we look further into our solutions, we have LEDs, which are going to cost around $50 on Amazon, so not a lot. Then we have our T12 fluorescent, which is going to be at around $119 on Amazon. And then we have the metal halide, which is going to be around $10.29 for each bulb. Okay, now let's look at decision factor number two, light output. Obviously, for the sun, you're going to have around at least 6 hours per day of just strong sun, depending on where you're located at. For LEDs, you're going to have around 80 watts. For T12 fluorescence, you're going to have around 40 watts. And metal halide, you're going to have around 100 lumens per watt. Now we're going to take our first break, and we're going to be right back with you with decision factor number 3 and 4. And we're back. And let's talk about decision factor number 3 now, which is space and size. Now obviously for the sun, you're going to have a whole area covered. Depending on whether the day's looking sunny or rainy, it can affect that coverage. Now, for our LEDs, we have around 46 inches per area, depending on how big the bulb is, which the bulb is usually going to be 46 inches, so you're going to be able to spread that out to a bigger area. Now, for the fluorescent, you're going to have 2-foot-long bulbs, which is going to spread to a bigger area. And then for the metal halide, you're going to have 4.6 inches per bulb. Now let's take a look at decision factor number 4, which is life expectancy. Now, obviously, life expectancy is pretty important when choosing lights, so we're going to take a first look at the sun, which obviously doesn't really have life expectancy, but you are going to have 9.5 hours per day of some sort of light. Now, for LEDs, you're going to have 25,000 hours, and for fluorescent lights, you're going to have around 75,000 hours if it's not used the entire day. And now for your metal halides, you're going to have around 6,000 to 15,000 hours, which isn't as much as the other two. Let's take a look at our aggregate weighted solution score. It's going to show that the sunlit option will be the highest, but we're actually looking for the other solutions for plants that just need some certain light, which would show that the LEDs are the best solution. Going back to what I previously stated about sunlit being a good option, unless you are looking at certain plants and you want the certain lights to help those plants out. And if you're looking at the options of lights that you want to choose, you're going to want to end up choosing LEDs because they are the best choice. Now, to sum up what we learned in this podcast, we looked at 3 different lights and we ended up finding out that LEDs are the best choice overall. And obviously, some people are going to say that sunlit is a good option, and it is absolutely true that sunlit is a good option for plants. But if you're looking at lights and you want to choose a light for your greenhouse, you are going to go with LEDs. And that is all I have for this week for Taylor Baca's Greenhouse Podcast. Make sure you stop in next week and have a lit day.